Hello and welcome everybody to today's post-news update. My name is Wai Ting and John Pollock is off today to deal with, I believe he's taking his son to the dentist, so we wish Little Max a clean bill of health at the dentist. But in the meantime, I am joined by Kate from Montreal. Welcome, Kate.
Good afternoon. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah. We just had you on last Friday, becoming a more frequent appearance on the Post Daily News. I believe this might be at least one of your few times that you get to appear on the public YouTube channel, at least. So, welcome,
Yeah,
Kate.
that's true. I'm usually on they usually sort of hide me away where only the members can can be subjected. So
We've
thank you
un-
so much for having me on.
We've unleashed Kate to the world, and she is here with us to talk about a good bit of news in the wrestling world today, among many other topics. The first of which I think we should get into is the fact that we have at least some confirmation about those reports out there about Roman Reigns, because Roman Reigns is no longer advertised for the upcoming WWE Premium Live event known as Hell in a Cell. If you actually look at the pictures right now, we actually have the previous graphic that clearly featured Roman Reigns front and center, and WWE just released an updated version with Cody Rhodes in his place. So Roman does not appear to be advertised for the show, and we can presume won't have a match. This is sort of what we suspected, but now that we have some concrete evidence, how do you think this affects these shows going forward with basically both championships no longer being active for these
I
smaller shows at
think
least?
I think that they really have to do something to add an extra hook to these shows. No pun intended. Um, when when you have a smaller show, you still need some kind of big match. And yes, I think Cody versus Seth will be enough for some people to get invested in the show. But you want to feel like something is on the line. I don't know how quickly they can do it, but if they don't want to take the double title off Roman, and I don't see any indication that they do, then I think that they have to work very hard and very quickly at elevating the US and Intercontinental titles. We'll see if that happens.
Very
I'm
hard and very quickly.
optimistic.
I really don't know how much they can honestly accomplish in a few weeks' time.
No,
They're gonna have to do. They'll have
I
to do
don't
a
know
whole
for Hell in
lot.
a Cell.
I will
Yeah,
say,
I don't know for Hell.
So I will say, Kate, sorry to cut you off, but the fact that Cody Rhodes remains such a major part here. Let me just get to this graphic here. Cody Rhodes, front and center, replacing Roman. I mean, they could have put Ronda Rousey right here. Instead, it's Cody Rhodes right up front. He's a part of the main campaign for the Money in the Bank promo that we just see. This to me shows you a whole lot of where they see Cody's value as a main draw, maybe in some ways as a replacement for Roman. So they're not doing this, but you had Cody versus Austin Theory. For a second, I thought you could possibly go that direction. If you have nobody cares, of course, about this United States Championship or the IC Championship, but if you put it on somebody hot enough like a Cody, does that elevate the belt to become a potential main attraction?
I think it does, and I think that there is a certain sense, just in terms of his presentation and everything, that Cody would elevate the belt, and it belongs with him. It would feel very much at home on Cody, the American Nightmare. I can see them going in that direction. They haven't really shown a sign that they're going to do that, other than kind of teasing the match with Theory, which was just a plot device to get him back to Seth. But we'll see.
If you wanted to perhaps boost the Cody Rollins rematch, and there's no way that Seth Rollins really deserves a title shot coming off of the two losses, but could they potentially hotshot the belt to Cody or to Rollins and potentially make that for a championship if they wanted to, just to add a bit of spice to that match?
They could. I think that they're kind of invested in Theory right now too. So I don't know if they want to get the belt off him right away. They could just stick with Cody versus Seth. I was going to say rubber match. It's not a rubber match. Cody's already 2 up, but they could go with the Cody versus Seth round 3 in a cell. They could then move on to Cody versus Theory, and that would work to boost two talents that they're clearly very interested in pushing.
So a reminder, what has been reported so far is that Roman will be on a reduced schedule. He is still scheduled to take part in a number of the major stadium shows that are coming up, and is still seems to be scheduled for some TV presence throughout this at least house show hiatus. So we'll follow up on that in the future. An update on Hikaru Shida. Of course, last night on AEW Dynamite, Tony Schiavone alluded to the fact that Shida may be injured, and then on Rampage, we will get some sort of announcement. So during the Rampage tapings that took place after AEW Dynamite, it was announced that Hikaru Shida is, at least in storyline or perhaps in reality, injured and out of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. And I say there might be at least a little bit of skepticism involved because the exact pinpointing of this injury is not exactly known. I haven't seen Rampage yet, but I believe they may be chalking it up to her last match in AEW. Of course, Hikaru Shida, after her appearance in the street fight in AEW against Serena Deeb, ended up wrestling for the past over 5 days for 4 different companies, including Tokyo Joshi Pro, Ice Ribbon, Wave, and Oz Academy most recently. So she was very active. I mean, it's very possible she might have been injured at one of these events. She is also currently prepping for this zombie live theater stage show, which, judging by this poster, it looks fucking awesome.
Oh yeah,
So
I'm totally in for that.
she seems to be keeping busy in Japan right now. But hard for me to believe that at least she would have been injured in that Deeb fight. But AEW might chalk that up to Deeb just to kind of for storyline purposes. But nonetheless, out of the Owen Tournament bracket is Serena Deeb, and replacing her instead is Chris Statlander. So we have some updated brackets here for the AEW Women's Tournament, where, of course, we saw Toni Storm advance after beating Jamie Hayter on Dynamite Wednesday. We're going to get Riho versus Ruby Soho this Friday. Britt Baker versus the Joker taking place next Wednesday on Dynamite. And then next Friday on Rampage, it will be Red Velvet versus Chris Statlander. What do you think of the replacement and about the Owen Tournament so far?
The one match that they've had in the official tournament I thought was very good last night. I do hope that they run back Storm versus Hayter again. I suspected from the beginning that you're going to get Toni Storm ultimately taken out at whatever round by sort of Britt Baker and her crew related shenanigans. And so I think that there is the opportunity to go back and delve into that story further. Velvet versus Chris Statlander, I think it'll be a good match. It's unfortunate that they did kind of do a program around these two not long ago, and but with them on the same side. And it was very cold with them and Layla Hirsch, who unfortunately is injured herself now. We'll see how it goes. I suspect that they're going to have trouble getting an audience invested in the match, just because there isn't a lot of anticipation around it. That said, Chris has been working this new character, this new look on episodes of Dark and Elevation recently, and I think it's gone over pretty well. She looks good. It's a little more serious than the alien character. The one thing that's interesting is I don't think they had committed to whether she was going to be a babyface or a heel. Putting her against Red Velvet, who's now aligned with Jade and the Baddies, automatically puts her in that babyface role because Velvet will be the heel. So yeah, I'm curious to see it. I think whoever wins this gets knocked out in the next round by either Ruby or Riho, and I haven't checked the spoilers yet, so I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, no spoilers on this show. But, you and I did talk about on Friday the potential for Hikaru Shida possibly entering the next round and somehow maybe turning heel against potentially somebody like Riho. Doesn't seem to be in the cards right now. But, looking at the character trajectory of a Hikaru Shida, I mean, maybe heel character is in the works. We don't know when she'll be back, but maybe we can look towards that. Maybe a zombie if she's doing this sort of zombie slayer type of thing.
You could have a stable with her and Abaddon.
Ooh, okay, lovely. Yes. So let's just continue on over here to the Owens Cup tournament brackets, where we can maybe update people on the men's side of things as well. Of course, we had Jeff Hardy. Oh my goodness. Advance in that match that we saw against Darby Allin yesterday. We'll talk a bit more about that after this. We also saw Adam Cole advance, beating Dax Harwood. So it'll be Hardy versus Cole. And then on the other side of the brackets, we have Rey Fenix versus Kyle O'Reilly and Samoa Joe versus the Joker taking place both next Wednesday on Dynamite. Any predictions for the other side and who we may see coming out of Hardy versus Cole?
I think it's going to be Cole. I think Cole goes to the final. I don't know if he wins. I can see it. But as far as the other side, it's a little difficult to predict because a lot of it hinges on who the Joker is. I was thinking it was going to be Miro. I'm not quite as sure now. I think whoever wins between Samoa Joe and the Joker, that's probably going to be the person who goes to the final. I kind of thought it was Samoa Joe, and again, maybe getting screwed out of a win along the way by Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh. We'll see. But I definitely pick Cole to go to the final.
So speaking of Darby Allin versus Jeff Hardy, I wanted to take a little bit of time just to kind of gather some of our reactions about this particular match because it seemed to be the main discourse coming out of last night's edition of Dynamite. This was, I mean, a crazy match itself, but the spot that everybody, of course, will be reacting to is this insane dive off of this ladder through a bunch of chairs by Darby Allin. One of the craziest ladder spots I've seen, period, never mind on television. And, you know, going on to review the show right after it aired last night with me and John. I mean, anytime we bring up the sort of like, you know, like parental perspective of like these people are doing too much, we care for their bodies. We're often just kind of bracing ourselves for criticism. Even after going off air yesterday, John and I were like, "Oh, we can't wait for like the the barrage of comments saying like like this is professional, whatever." I was a bit surprised to find that much of the discourse I discovered was in agreement with us from the general audience, and look no further than even our own YouTube channel right here for the latest comment here from Anwar, who says, "I feel as we all get older and develop an even stronger appreciation for life, the dangerous spots become things we all can do without. I enjoyed the main event, but they could have taken out some of that stuff and the match would have still banged." Looking over to Reddit, this person says, "I'm getting old because all I can do is wince. Darby doesn't even need to do stuff like this, to be honest. His charisma and crowd connection is strong enough where he doesn't have to do this for pops." Anyway, Kate, I wanted to get your reaction, and I wanted to ask you: is this too much?
I have a fairly high tolerance for I don't know what you'd call it, daredevilry. I do. I also have a lot of neck and shoulder problems, so seeing people take hits like that right on their back, just it's like I can feel it. I do worry because the more you do these things, and you and John mentioned about the dangers of putting something like that on TV because then it raises the bar for what has to be done on pay-per-views. I think that it can become very dangerous. Well, it's already very dangerous, but it can get into ridiculous territory very, very quickly. I think in particular with this kind of move where you're talking about something that could end someone's career in an instant, if not
more,
worse.
Kate.
Or more, yes, exactly. Yeah. Like I was thinking, I would so much rather watch like sort of Nick Gage cutting someone up with a pizza cutter, or smashing people with light tubes, than watch someone take a hit like that on their back. Because at least with the cuts, you know that they're going to heal. This, I'm okay with it, but very cautiously okay with it. I don't want to see this done a lot, and I honestly don't know how Darby does it. I swear to God, I have a theory that if you looked closely at him, he's just kind of Gumby in a human suit, because I can't imagine that he has actual like bones and tendons the way the rest of us do with the kind of hits he's able to take.
Yeah, and as I also wanted to credit, of course, the incredible Kimber Last Kick for this wonderful. I mean, at this point, almost iconic picture. You could
Yeah,
go check out her Instagram, check out her doing some of the greatest work
she's amazing.
that's out
Yeah.
there. And from what I hear, she might be doing this on her cell phone too. So just incredible. But this is the type of picture where you can zoom in and see every single one of these reactions. And I wish I could. I don't know if I can every single one. Like it's fun just to like play Where's Waldo and just to look at every single one of these people with their arms just in front of their head, not believing exactly what they're looking at. So we are grateful, of course, that we have this, incredible, honestly, piece of art that we saw of a man
Mhm.
doing this incredible death-defying stunt. But if you're Tony Khan, I mean, you have to, I think, continue to just ask how lucky can you get? How many times can you be lucky that on live TV you can get away with stuff like this? What sort of conversation are you having with your talents about like pushing the envelope this far?
I think if you're Tony Khan's insurers, you want to have a conversation with him because they have a liability, and it does. The more you push these limits, the more you're inviting disaster.
Yeah. So, let us know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the video below or just send us a message in the chat room here. So, yeah, it was just an interesting topic of conversation and an interesting response that I found from the audience last night. Just onto maybe some of the news that I don't know how much we'll necessarily have to comment on, but it is important in the grand scheme of professional wrestling. Of course, we mentioned last night on Dynamite, on Rewinded Dynamite, that the general manager of TNT, TBS, and True TV has exited from Warner Brothers Discovery following, of course, their merger. His name is Brett White, and oversaw the creation of AEW and the broadcast of AEW Roads to the Top, a number of other products into the brand. And it remains to be seen, Kate, how a new person coming in will look upon AEW. Of course, reports are out there, or speculation is out there, that AEW will have a big spotlight put on it at the upfront. So you would think that they continue to be a big part of the TBS TNT portfolio. But of course, with professional wrestling, you never know how somebody may react.
I'm interested to see who's leaving following the merger. I'm also interested to see who's coming in now. In his case, what I understood is that they're not actually replacing him. They're eliminating his position, and the role that he was doing is going to be taken over by Kathleen Finch, who was the person he was answering to. Her background is one that I think she will be a harder sell for professional wrestling. She comes out of HGTV. She's a person responsible for shows like Ace of Cakes. This professional wrestling is not going to be an industry that she's terribly familiar with, and maybe not one that she's terribly sympathetic to. I don't know, but we shall see what happens, and we'll see if someone else is brought in to work with her um, to sort of grease the wheels for shows like AEW, which have been successful for the networks.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think the results you would hope speak for themselves. The fact that Turner has taken so much to AEW in its advertising we talked about, using Tony Khan, for instance, as part of its
Mm-hmm.
AEPI public service announcement types of videos. You would think that that would keep it in a good spot. Now, my speculation or my questions are, how does it affect the renegotiation? How much money that a Turner may be willing to put into AEW when it's time for renegotiation. What does it mean for a potential Ring of Honor deal? Is Kathleen Finch as open to having more than two professional wrestling products on her networks, expanding to a third? Remains to be seen. We also have on the WWE side of things, they have. Oops, that is the next topic. But we go to
Spoiler alert.
WWE. They have named a new chief human resources officer. Her name is Suzette Ramirez Carr. She has spent time working in senior positions with the United Talent Agency, Beauty Counter, and Oak Tree Capital Management. I really don't have much insight into what a human resources officer does. I can only imagine that she will have her hands full working in this company, though.
I would imagine. I think there's a tendency to think that she's going to deal with wrestlers. I suspect she's dealing a lot more with behind the scenes personnel. So we shall see.
We shall see. Yes, and as we slightly teased there in the graphics, we want to talk about the latest with Kota Ibushi, and I saved this more towards the end because it's kind of a difficult, for us to necessarily discuss on a news show what exactly might be news versus what exactly just might be somebody, putting stuff out there on Twitter, and this is very much that it's one professional wrestler tweeting a number of things, accusations, things like that on Twitter, compounded with the difficulty of us not understanding his style of writing nor his language. So we are having to rely on a lot of translations, and I preface all of that to say uh, it's the talk of the wrestling world right now, so I feel like we have to say it. But at the same time, please take a lot of this information with a bit of a grain of salt because we are just going by some of the great translation work that has been out there. And Kota Ibushi has been continuing to be very active on Twitter, tweeting a number of things, and we rely again on the wonderful at Golden_Kuma for some translations about some of his most recent tweets. Ibushi was asked about the unification of the IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental Championships to become the inaugural IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And to that, he says, according to a translation from Golden Kuma, I guess I was the right person for the role. It still doesn't make sense to me. It looks like I'm making excuses for saying it afterwards, so please let me get away with this. So being very publicly vocal about seemingly a dislike for that whole scenario of unifying the championship. Whether or not you agree with him, I think it's, again, maybe more important the fact that it's Kota Ibushi speaking out against a company direction. So people might in this side of the world think of something like this as being a work. From what I understand in Japan, this type of kayfabe breaking is not common whatsoever and might be regarded as a much more serious deal. Before I go on, before I let you get on, Kate, maybe just a few more of these here. Fan asked, I'm worried that you're tired. Ibushi says, my daily life is not tiring at all, but I just had to say it because while the good parts are good, New Japan Pro Wrestling's culture of having to let the bad things slide was so abnormal. I am going to expose all of it. I think you'll know then. There are some abnormalities that you would overlook when you're in the inner circle. It will sound imprudent, but someone can die at any moment with power harassment, lying, and cheating being commonplace. I feel sorry for it and I have to correct this situation. I have only told 1/1000th of the whole story. There are so many that I can tell you within my capacity, but if I told you 20 of them, they would execute me in the dark. I don't have anyone by my side because they think I'm an idiot. It's me alone against the promotion. So, again, we thank you to Golden Kuma for the translation, and again, we don't speak Japanese. We know that Kota Ibushi himself likes to maybe speak in very he's a very unique character, is what I'm trying to say. So even if you do speak Japanese, I imagine there's still some left up to interpretation. So I don't know how much of that you can take literally. Nonetheless, the rift continues between Ibushi and New Japan Pro Wrestling publicly, and it doesn't seem to be getting better.
No, I think at this point the news story is that this is happening. I don't think we know enough to address the basis for his claims. I don't know if we ever will. But right now, clearly, as you said, this is the talk of the wrestling world. It is something that is very, very clearly going to be a problem for him and for for the relationship with the company going forward. I have very limited experience with this. What I do know from working with companies in Japan is that speaking about your employer that way is extremely poorly thought of, and this is something that could result in him not being able to work in wrestling, at least in Japan. And so I'm sure he is very well aware of that. So the fact that he's doing that is enough to get a robust discussion happening for sure.
There is one particular response that he gave in a string of responses Kota Ibushi did that I think has been maybe the biggest source of controversy or attention, and that is one particular set of characters that what is the direct translation? Some sort of like anti what?
Anti-social organization, I think was the it's yeah, it's two kanji, and I believe that's, but it's a euphemism that is well known.
Yes, and the accusation is, something to do with the yakuza, and even I feel dirty even saying the word because Karen Peterson, who is in the chat room, thank you, Karen, has actually tweeted out again. The story here is even the accusation, even the idea that somebody is mentioning this. And in Japan, the severity of mentioning something like the Yakuza in relation to any company, much less your employer, carries with it a lot of weight. She tweeted out a link here just about the Yoshimoto Kogyo scandal that affected the Japanese entertainment industry that I would encourage people to check out just for a bit more detail on that. And again, we have nothing to say whatsoever about the claims, but more so the idea that this is the sort of territory we're entering now with Kota Ibushi and what he's dealing with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it is it's again doesn't seem to be getting better. For a bit, for more, also, other than Golden underscore Kuma, of course, who's been doing great work, and there are a lot of translators that are out there who have been asked seemingly and understandably don't really want to touch this because of how delicate the situation is. But there is also another really great thread out there from at the Feelite, THEFEELITE, who does a great job, basically, giving you a comprehensive translated look in English about exactly what might be going on in detail to the best of their knowledge. So we thank all the translators who are doing this work. And we'll be updated. We'll keep everybody updated in the days ahead. We go up next to NXT ratings here, Kate. And NXT on Tuesday, with their edition of the show, fell to its lowest viewership figures on the USA Network since its debut. The May 10th edition of the show averaged 533,000 viewers, with approximately 130,000 or a .10 in the 18 to 49 demographic, per Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics and Showbuzz Daily. Both figures were the lowest for any episode of NXT on the USA Network dating back to its debut in September of 2019, and excluding the episodes that have aired on Sci-Fi, it represented a drop of 19% in viewership and a 25% loss in the key demo from last week's Spring Break and special. The drops were sizable from last week's episode, with females 18 to 49 declining by 44% and adults 18 to 34 dropping 46%. Males 18 to 49 were only down by 9% week over week. Are you keeping up with NXT at all, Kate?
Not really, and I think that obviously I'm a big fan of women's wrestling and try to advocate for women within the industry as best I can. But I didn't watch this show, even though it was heavily promoted as featuring their women's division, and it's because I think NXT with this rebrand with 2.0, I found it off-putting and I haven't gone back to it. And I suspect that there's a certain element of that with a lot of fans who enjoyed NXT for what it was before. I'm a little cautious about saying that this 1 week is representative of a larger trend or is a reflection on the programming in general, because these things do fluctuate. If I'm a producer on the show, I'm taking note of this. I think it's something to be taken seriously and looking at why this might have happened. I do think it's instructive to look at where the drops occurred, which is very much within that Prime demo. I'm curious that the drop was so much in terms of female viewers. And yeah, if I'm a producer, I want to look into why that might have been.
If you're WWE, you put out a show that, pretty much featured an entire women's, does this give them pause, from doing something like this in the future?
My fear is that it will give them pause from doing it at all. My hope is that it will give them pause and make them reflect on the larger presentation of women on NXT, and why simply taking what they have done and saying, hey, we're putting women on TV, may not have been enough to engage fans of women's wrestling.
Yeah, I'm in agreement because I mean overall, I think star power moves the rating. And what we got on the show was a lot of breakout tournament matches featuring complete unknowns, in a main event featuring Natalia versus Cora Jade. And yeah, like Natalia, I suppose, is coming from the main roster, but Cora Jade to me is still a relative unknown for most audiences. Not somebody who is. It's not a big headlining main event. So I would maybe look more towards the lack of star power on this show as maybe more of the culprit. But we'll see how if in the future they will continue to do maybe shows like this, and we'll see what that result is. But yeah, so that is the NXT ratings, and that kind of is it for today's news. John Pollock will be back tomorrow, and we'll be catching everybody up then. Until then, where can people find you, Kate, for all of your work?
They can find me on Twitter. I am She Rants About Wrestling at She Rants MTL. And yeah, talking about lots of different promotions and ideas that I have.
Yes, always a great follow with a lot of great opinions. Is Kate from Montreal. She Rants MTL. I want to make a note that the British Wrestling Experience will be dropping a bit later today, so check out that show on their feed. And also, special start time for BD Elite on the Up Next Twitch channel at 2 o'clock Eastern. So just if you're watching live, take a quick break after this and go to twitch.tv/updeckpodcast, and you can catch Raiden and Davey give their thoughts on AEW Dynamite, as well as whatever else is going on in their world. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you so much, Kate, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.